Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. 5 reasons why I actually have come around and I like 12 more than I did the first time. The number one reason that I like the 12-team playoff more than I thought I did. The more that I think about it, it incentivizes teams to play hard all season long because there are real incentives to playing hard late, right? If you play hard all season long, if you win, if you're Bama, now you get an automatic first-round bye in the playoffs, which essentially gives you a bye week, which allows you to get healthy, get rested late in the season. There is a real benefit to that. On top of that, if you are in that 5 to 8 range, there is a benefit. You get a home playoff game in the opening round. If you're in that, whatever you want to call it, the 9 to 12 range, you're just fighting to get in and you want to get in and you're so happy to be in that you're playing hard. And so what I do think that it does is, first of all, this structure eliminates something that has become one of the biggest issues in college football, which is, of course, opting out. And opting out has become this incredibly just huge thing that nobody could have anticipated when we initially started this college football playoff. It really started, whatever it was, 2015, 2016, whenever it was, with Leonard Fournette, with Christian McCaffrey, and now it has snowballed where it used to be only the top 2, 3, 4 players would end up opting out if they weren't in the playoff. Now you have dozens of kids opting out. On top of that, and I think this is something nobody saw coming, although I did talk about it a little bit, is not only do you have kids opting out of playoff games, you have kids opting out of regular season games. And now I know last year was a little weird because of COVID and it was a little bit different, and I get all that. But at the end of the day, I don't think under the current structure that is going to change. So let's just think about it in the big picture, right? Let's say you're Penn State or you're Auburn. You're somebody that's good, but you're not going to compete for a playoff berth. You're 10 games into the season. You're, say, 7-3. In the old days, 7-3 is a really good season. It's not where you want to be. You want to be 10-0. You want to be playing for the big enchilada, the ultimate prize, whatever. But 7-3 is a pretty good season. Well, now, when you're 7-3 with 10 games into the season with 2 games left, guess what happens? You kind of look around and you say, wait a second now. We can't compete for an SEC West title if I'm at Auburn. We can't compete for an SEC title. We can't compete for a college football playoff berth. So why am I going to go out there and play the last 2 games of the season? If I'm at Penn State, we lost to Ohio State. We can't win the division. We can't make the playoff. We can't go to the Big Ten title game. Why am I going to play? And so because of the way the structure would work under a 12-team playoff, it incentivizes just about everybody on just about every marquee team to keep playing until late. Now, look, are there going to be great NFL draft prospects on, a 4-8 team going into the last week of the season or a 4-7 team, and might that kid choose to opt out? Yeah, he might. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about the best teams, the biggest brands, the teams that are competing at the highest level, you're not going to have to worry about kids opting out, forget in bowl games, but during the regular season. On top of that, speaking of bowl games, I do think it creates just a better, more watchable postseason. And one thing that I don't think anybody anticipated, and, we can all take credit in hindsight, but this is one that I certainly didn't anticipate, is that the college football playoff has essentially made all of these other bowl games irrelevant. I don't like it. I don't think it's great. I still remember the day when it used to mean something to go to the Rose Bowl, when it used to mean something to go to the Sugar Bowl. But let's be honest, for these kids that are playing high school football right now, that are coming up to play college football, if you don't make the playoff is the end game. If you don't make the playoff, you're not excited to play even in the Rose Bowl, even in the Sugar Bowl, even in the Peach Bowl. And I know there are exceptions when a team makes the Rose Bowl for the first time in 30 years or whatever, the team is fired up even if they're not in the playoff. But in general, most of these bowl games, kids just are not excited to play in. And it's unfortunate. I wish they were, but that's just the reality. When you came into the season thinking you're going to compete for a college football playoff berth, now you got to play in the Sugar Bowl or the Alamo Bowl or whatever. Kids just aren't fired up. And so what this does is I think it creates more postseason games that people want to watch, certainly more games that people, the players will want to play in, and obviously it will kind of redo the bowl structure as we know it. Now, I don't know exactly how it's going to work and what bowls would be eligible for what playoff games and how all of that would work, but I do think it would kind of trim down the fat when it comes to bowl season. I think the Dunder Mifflin Bowl in Des Moines, Iowa or whatever, like I think some of those bowl games will go away. And let's be honest, I know people watch them because they actually get better ratings than you would think. But if the players don't want to play, if they're on in the middle of the day, if they don't mean as much as they used to, I don't think it's the worst thing that we now have more postseason games. I was going to say out of conference games, more postseason games that kids are excited about playing in, fans are excited about potentially attending and watching. And hey, maybe we can still keep 10, 12 bowls outside of that, and then the teams that aren't in the playoff can still go. And hey, if a kid opts out because his team went 9-3 or whatever, then so be it. The third reason that I am in favor, or I have at least come around to the idea that 12 teams might be right, in addition to opting out, in addition to making the postseason better, what I do think it will also do, and what I know for a fact it will do, is create better early season college football games. And why is that? It is because now, all of a sudden, you know that in the current structure, if you lose one game, you're in trouble. If you lose 2 games, you're totally screwed. And so if you're LSU or Alabama, you might schedule one tough out-of-conference game, but you also know you got to go through that gauntlet of the SEC, and so you're going to schedule a lot of Louisiana Monroe and the Citadel and all those kind of schools. And what ends up happening is there are fewer marquee out-of-conference games because in the current structure, you know, hey, you want to challenge yourself in the out-of-conference, that's fine. But you lose that game, you're behind the 8 ball from the beginning. So now what I believe that the expanded playoff does is it incentivizes these schools to schedule marquee games early in the season without the fear of losing. Just as an example, I looked it up just for fun because this is what I do on a Sunday in June. I was looking at Alabama's future schedules going forward. In 2025, they will play both at Florida State and Wisconsin at home in the regular season. I will tell you this. I know Nick Saban's a legend. I don't know if he'll still be there in 2025, but I also don't believe that Alabama would schedule 2 mega out-of-conference games in 2025 if they did not believe that the playoff would be expanded, if they did not believe that 1 loss would put them in trouble and 2 losses would bury them and give them no chance to compete for a national championship. By the way, 2026, they get Florida State at home and they travel to West Virginia. The point I'm trying to make, early season games in some ways will matter less because 1 loss won't doom you, so we will get better marquee games earlier in the season. Fourth reason that I love, or I at least am coming around to the idea of the college football playoff expansion, is because of what I talked about last time. I do think it will flatten the curve, and I hate to use that term. I know it's political. I don't intend it to be political. I apologize if it is. It'll flatten the recruiting landscape. Again, I've talked about it at length. I'm not going to get too far into it. But at the end of the day, all of the best high school players in America feel like, wait a second now, if I don't go to Ohio State, if I don't go to Clemson, if I don't go to Alabama, I can't compete at the highest level. Now look, maybe in a 12-team playoff at the end of the day, it's still going to be Alabama and Clemson competing at the top of the sport. Listen, as long as Clemson, as long as Dabo's at Clemson, as long as Nick Saban's at Alabama, those teams are always going to be good. So it might still be Alabama winning the title, but at least a kid from the West Coast can go to USC, can go to Oregon, and know that they have a shot to make this thing. They can go to, if you're from Texas, you can go to Texas. If you're from Texas, you can go to Texas A&M. You don't have to go to Bama. If you're from, the Midwest, you don't only have to go to Ohio State because now, wait a second, maybe Penn State can get in. Maybe Michigan can get in. Maybe Michigan State can get in. Maybe Nebraska down the road can get in. I only bring it up to say I do think it will help spread the talent around. We won't have these super teams, and I think it'll be better for the overall ecosystem of college football, where now, under the current structure, college football, again, is dominated essentially by 3 teams that are on a completely different level than everybody else. Finally, the 5th reason, another one that I've talked about. It's the group of 5s. And I've talked about it so much, I'm not going to get super in-depth into this, but the reason that I do like this opportunity this expansion to 12 is because now the group of fives have a real shot. And again, I've talked about it so much. I'm not Mr. Cincinnati would have won the championship if you had let them in. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is the idea that it does seem like in so many ways just flat out unfair. Doesn't it seem unfair that a Cincinnati can go undefeated in the regular season, that a Coastal Carolina can go undefeated in the regular season, and that they don't even get a shot to compete for a national championship? I talked about it a lot on last show. At some point, it's like if you're not even going to give these teams that opportunity, then heck, why even play the games? Why even rank them? Why even put out a stupid ranking every week where you have Cincinnati at number 12, knowing that no matter what they do, you're not going to move them up because you don't want to give up one of those 4 spots to a school like Cincinnati. So those are the 5 reasons that I do like the idea of expanding to 12, even if I think 8 is better. It incentivizes teams to play hard all season. You're going to have more teams invested later in the season. And then on top of that, everybody is going to be playing for something, whether it's a first-round bye, home field advantage, or, of course, just to get into the playoff. Number 2, there's more postseason games that are of interest to the players and even the fans. 3, it creates better early season games, which is something I don't think a lot of people have talked about. 4, it balances out recruiting a little bit. And 5, the group of fives have a little bit of a better